Playing Counter-Strike, being on Twitter, all of these things kind of do something to a person. As in, all of these things kind of make you think about, you know, how common it is to be edgy online. Like, I feel like back in the day, it used to be seen as this kind of subversive thing to just be a dick, like a snarky, sarcastic dick who is never genuine about anything, doesn't have real passions or interests, because all of those things could be used as potential lines of attack for other people who are just as disingenuous and shallow. And so what you've basically seen online is the creation of a type of person who has no interests, no real passions outside of the most vapid and shallow, socially acceptable things, and they don't really commit to any real opinions on anything, because if they were to do that, then that would be something that they would have to defend, which they are not confident in their ability to do. You see where I'm going with this? So whenever they're asked about their views on things, or whenever they're given the opportunity to give their views on things, they end up making every statement through the veneer of like a joke or a gag, and constantly imply that they have certain views in this or that direction, but never outright state it. And this is in addition to the constant swearing and references to just tragedies, like terrible things that we really shouldn't be talking about in the first place. At least in this manner, this disrespectful manner. And I think there's an impulse to do this for some people because it feels like liberating for them to say things that they feel as though they're not supposed to say. I'm putting my glasses back on because I have a headache, and whenever I take them off, it seems to make whatever headache that I have worse. I'm not sure what that's about, but yeah, it feels liberating for them because they feel as though there are certain people who want them to say certain things or don't want them to say other things, and they feel like it's giving a big fuck you to those people by saying these things that they don't even necessarily agree with or feel. I understand that I'm being vague, but I don't want to say like, oh, you know, I'm talking about Holocaust denial, or I'm talking about, you know, racist memes or whatever, because it could be those things. It could be all kinds of other things. Like, this is a very general topic. And I think you have people starting out from there, but what they don't really understand is that there are a litany of people who also want them to be saying the things that they're saying. Like, either people with an agenda who these people end up being kind of useful idiots for, because in some cases they parrot talking points and rhetoric that is shockingly similar to the actual, you know, bad people that they're mimicking or trying to echo in some fashion for the sake of edginess. And then also you have people who are just like themselves who want them to say these things so that they can feel, you know, accepted in their own behavior, so that they can feel normal in their own behavior. And it creates this vicious cycle where you have these groups of people who all feel like they're going against the man, who all feel like they're free thinkers and that they're totally doing it on their own, even though they exist in this weird feedback loop where they're constantly reaffirming the acceptability of their own behavior to each other. Like, isn't that kind of weird? I mean, you see these communities all over the place, be it on forums, Twitter, Reddit. Well, I guess not Reddit so much these days, but there's an entire website for this kind of thing, at least on most of the boards. It's called 4chan. And I don't think that's what 4chan really used to be, but unfortunately, as the younger folk have come onto the website and disrespected its lineage more and more, it has unfortunately become a cesspool for this kind of thing. That and people shilling their Discord accounts and servers. Now, I don't want to get into that tangent again over the course of this video, but seeing all this online, especially on online games, but just in general, it really makes me feel like there is nothing, absolutely nothing, unique, innovative, or interesting, or cool about being an edgy retard. You know, and I don't even like the fact that I'm using that word, because that word has become so normal for me on the internet. You know, even though it's like kind of a hurtful word to a lot of people, you know, it's like, even if I don't particularly have a problem with the word as someone who, you know, may have that word be directed at me as someone with a mental disability, that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone who's watching the videos has the same standard, or everyone who is on Earth has the same standard, right? Like, there's certain basic forms of conduct that we should adhere to try and maintain some respect, at least outgoing respect, for the people around us or who may stumble across us. And I think that's something that I've neglected to do on this channel, thinking that, you know, being edgy and being vulgar are these kind of filters that make me with the cool crowd and I'm against the man, yo, and all this. And it's like, well, no, you know, you're just being kind of an obnoxious lunatic at the end of the day, right? That's what I feel I've been in a lot of these videos. And it's made me think, like, I really need to tone down the vulgarity. I already don't swear very much in my videos, but it's like, you know, when I was a kid, we would swear. You know, I would hear my parents swear. They didn't really mind the fact that we would swear, but obviously other parents feel differently than mine, and they wouldn't want, you know, their kids to necessarily hear that. I don't have to think that that standard is preferable for me and, you know, my future children, right? But it's a standard that you can respect without agreeing with. And I think, you know, there's a lot of things like this about, you know, for example, politeness and respectability and presenting yourself in a, you know, tolerant kind of manner. A lot of these things aren't valued that much these days, right? I feel like we've eschewed all this stuff in favor of vulgarity and trying to be shocking and as upsetting as possible, and unfortunately I've fallen into that mental trap as well, but it's not one that I want to be in, right? Especially, you know, as I've sat down and actually tried to empathize with the various people in the world, right? Not just on YouTube, but just wherever. It's made me think that in today's climate, we have, now I don't want to say we as a collective, because there's a lot of people out there, but at least on the internet, a lot of us have forgotten a lot of these basic rules, a lot of the, and you know, I don't like to call it rules because I think it gets away from what I'm talking about. You're just going to have the anti-conformist people go, oh, hey, look, you know, he's talking about rules. I'm trying to fight against rules. But no, they're not rules. They're like, it's like a code, right? They're like principles. You know, rules implies that these are things that are, you know, being pushed on you, right? Like there's I think of like a principal in a school arbitrarily deciding what you can and can't do, or your asshole boss or something. But a principle, a code, this comes from you, right? It comes from you independently deciding, this is how I want to treat other people. And I think we run the risk of not necessarily even having a code that we've thought out for ourselves when we, box ourselves into these communities full of people that are saying that, behaving and speaking this way is okay. We run the risk of not necessarily thinking through all the consequences and deciding for ourselves if this is okay or not. And one of the essential things that you ought to do when you're going through that process mentally is to consider, well, how would this make me feel if I were in this other person's shoes, right? How would this make me feel? And so there are things like this that I see in my videos, even something as, to me, small as a individual word, that could have a significant impact, right? It's why I want to try and gear this channel more towards the positive things that exist in my life. It's why I did that dumb phone video, about a type of technology that I really love, that I think has been beneficial to my mental health. It's why I do videos with my wife, someone who brings a lot of positivity to my world. And it's why I've been talking about retro cameras and things of that nature, because that's an interest that I feel a huge amount of passion for. And I think that's what the internet was originally intended for, at least insofar as its reach as a communication platform. A lot of the earliest websites were message boards and forums where people shared their obscure interests, or perhaps not so obscure. They came together and communicated with one another from all over the country and all over the world based on their interests. And of course, there's a lot of YouTubers sharing their interests right now. I think that's a great thing. And a lot of them are doing so in a clean kind of way. But, it makes me think about my place in all of this and how I got my start. I keep all my old videos up. I don't delete anything, no matter how cringy I may find it. And if you go back, if you sort the videos on my channel through oldest, you will see that when I started out, almost all my videos were just about old video games. They were about my hobbies, particularly my hobby in gaming and video game collecting. And I can't stomach to watch those videos because I was very awkward, very obviously an autistic child. Nothing wrong with being one of those, but let's be real here. When you're struggling with autism, it's very apparent, and I don't like to look at that, especially because it's me. I'd rather do what I can to lift myself up through deliberate practice, and to do my best to try and lift other people up as well who may be going through, the same kind of developmental hurdles. But those videos are still up, right? And it gives me a sense of where my head was at the time, and also the kind of content that I watched. And recently what I've been doing is going back and watching a lot of these channels from my childhood that I was really into, as well as new ones who do kind of a similar thing. And what I found has been remarkable, at least to me. I feel just as passionate about that kind of content now as I did back then. Literally nothing changed, right? In some ways I feel even better about it than I did back then. And same goes for my collection and the games that I've recently been playing, not just Counter-Strike. Thankfully I've been branching off. And it really, immersing myself in all this stuff has really filled me with this feeling like, wow, isn't it really awesome, the life that we live? Isn't it incredible, the world that we live in? The fact that this kind of technology exists and the fact that we can be alive at a time when it does is such a beautiful thing, right? And I can share that with all of you. And I think that's something that I want to do again. That's something I want to focus more on. I mean, look on YouTube. Look on your homepage. If you've clicked on videos of mine, I reckon you've probably clicked on other ones. And if you have history turned on, YouTube is going to show you a lot of videos that end up in a pretty negative direction. Videos about the black pill, videos about incels, videos about forever alone, being socially challenged, socially awkward, anxious, and the like. Lots of videos about inflation, probably. Lots of videos about economic downturns and the dangerous situation we're in the world. Perhaps impending World War III, things like that. There's a lot of videos covering topics like this. There's a lot of videos talking about NEETs nowadays. To my surprise, I used to be one of the only people doing it. And in those videos, people regularly talk about how the 9 to 5 is a scam and society is a scam and all this. And I don't even necessarily disagree with a lot of these points. No, I'm not having some sort of Protestant work ethic conversion over here. But I'm more so trying to say, you're not being subversive by saying all this stuff that, at this point, like everybody's saying. You know, you're not being edgy and cool and all this stuff. You're echoing each other's talking points. And I think the most revolutionary thing, if we think about this from a purely contrarian perspective, we could do right here, right now, is be positive, right? Talk about all the beautiful things in the world. Talk about the things that make us happy. You know, isn't that a radical idea in today's day and age where everyone is so enamored by doom scrolling and the like? Talk about the things that make us happy, the things that spark joy, and follow our statements with a question. What makes you feel joy? What sparks that happiness in your life? And I want to know. You know, it's like these things were at one point the foundation of the internet. And I think they can be again. You know, there's a lot of doomerism out there and negativity talking about how, you know, I actually want everything that Osaka's talking about here in this hypothetical video, but the internet is so bad now, and Gen Z is terrible, and Gen Alpha is terrible, and the school system is terrible, and smartphones are terrible, and minimalist design online, as if that's somehow related to this, is terrible, and that is why I can never be part of a community online. Now, my friends in the small internet sphere are actually pretty good about this. You know, they just kind of want to do their own thing. But I encounter this sentiment on my channel, right? When it's like, no, like you can start your own website, you can start your own forum, you can start your own chat room, you know, with just like-minded people. Start your own YouTube channel and talk about the things that you really love. That's what it's about. That is what it's about. And your world doesn't have to be centered around all the noise out there. All the stuff that you don't like, the things that make you mad. I know the internet is designed at this point in a way where it's supposed to feed you that stuff. But you can break out of it by expressly going in with this intention to curate the kind of content that you want to see, things that spark joy, and also putting that kind of energy out into the world. You can escape it. You know, people thought it was impossible for me to escape the smartphone. I did. You have the ability to make choices. You know? I don't consume caffeine, because I know that caffeine is going to give me a lot of anxiety, no matter how much I have. And so I just don't consume it, right? Something I've talked about a lot on this channel, my addiction to that substance, you know? Only substance I've ever been addicted to for, you know, multiple years, right? Addicted to in a big way. I was using it every day. But I overcame that, right? It's something that people would say that you literally can't live without. People say, if I get up in the morning, I gotta have my coffee. Well, might have gave me a jolt of energy, but it made me anxious, right? People, like, I'm not saying everyone, but some people find these concepts unimaginable. I think perhaps some people just don't like the idea that they have agency, that they can look at the world around them and determine, you know, what might be the best for them, and then try it. And if it doesn't work out, try something else, and then assess that on the merits. Like, people don't like feeling burdened with all of that, and I understand. But the moment that you take that leap and actually try to better your situation, even if it's just making your experience online more comfortable and less negative, you're going to have a hell of a lot better of a time. And you're going to feel thankful that you did take that leap, right? You're going to feel thankful that you did get back into those old hobbies that have been laying dormant and, you know, waiting for you to get that spark of interest back into them, you know? And maybe there's a reason why the clocks stay the clocks stay turned on in all the old consoles. You know, they were just waiting for you to turn them back on and see what time it is. See how long ago your last save was. I think, you know, I'm yapping a lot, but the basic point that I want to get across here is there's a lot of negative talk online, and most of it is completely unnecessary and serves no purpose whatsoever. Like, most of us are just here trying to have a fun time. So be a part of the solution, not the problem. That's what I'm going to be trying to do, at least.